So I worked with this guy. His initials were BR. That's not his real initials. I was just making them up. And how I happened to work with this guy is I was working at a place over in Fairfield. First they were in Little Falls, and they moved to Fairfield. And this happened in Little Falls. The guy who owned the company, he hired the fellow I'm talking about, this BR, right out of jail because the state had some sort of program for rehabilitation. If you hire a felon, an ex-con, they'll pay his salary. So the guy went for it, the owner of the company. So BR shows up and he makes a big to-do every morning about being there. And then he would disappear. What he would do is he'd go down to the gas station down the street. And he was getting paid for doing nothing where I work. And then he's probably doing nothing at the gas station either. So I was in my late 20s and maybe he was in his mid 20s. We were young men at the time. And this is back in the late 70s, early 80s or something like that. He drives up with a Cadillac Escalade or some fancy American car at the time. And we're saying, BR, where the hell did you get the money for this? And this is the story he told us. Him and his buddy went over to this young lady's house, and they were taking turns banging her. And while one guy was banging her, the other guy was ransacking the house. And he found in a closet, in the back of a closet, rolled up inside a sock, a wad of $100 bills. Now, back in the late 70s and early 80s, that's a lot of money. You have a wad of hundreds, you're doing good. So he put it down as a down payment on his Cadillac Escalade, or whatever the hell he bought. This is before SUVs were common, but still a big car. So he drove it around, and then it got repossessed because he couldn't make the payments. So this guy is what you would call an Italian stallion. And I've seen with my own eyes women would throw themselves at him. He was a short fella, probably less than 5 foot. And he had a barrel chest and giant biceps, and he had a handsome face, like some sort of Roman god. And then he had his hair slacked back in a mullet of the time. And yeah, women would throw themselves at him. I asked one lady I work with, why do women throw themselves at this guy? And she goes, they want to jump his bones. So my boss asked another coworker, goes, so what's with this guy and women? You know, how does he get all these women? So the guy who's busting on my boss, he goes, he has a wart on his tongue. So, okay. He scared me a little bit, but, you know, he figured I was totally harmless and nothing. So he left me alone, right? He was a real rebel rouser in school. Like he would throw a spitball at the teacher, and then when he'd turn around, he'd look at everybody else, daring anyone to rat him out. He's that sort of a guy. So he disappeared for a while. I said, great. I don't know. I really didn't like him around. He was weird. You know, there's something off about him. I don't know what it was. So the Star, the North News or the Star Ledger, I forget what big paper it was, someone had cut out the front page and pasted it up on the bulletin board. And there's a picture of BR, and you got to realize he's only 5 foot. He must have some, on each side of him, holding one of his giant biceps, was a big, giant state trooper cop who must have been 6'4", and they were dressed in their, you know, my state has neo-Nazi uniforms for the state troopers, even though they're blue. And it was a black and white picture, but I knew they were blue. So the headline of the article was bank embezzler caught with 50,000 in Fort Lee. So we're reading the article. He seduced a head teller for Mid-Atlantic Bank. They're not around anymore, so I can mention her name. She's described as a stunning blonde. Her parents came in and paid her bail the next day. But he ended up in the can. And the picture he had 3 or 4 days worth of beard on his chin. But he still had his hair slacked back. So at any rate, he seduced his head teller, and she was taking money from the bank, but the bank examiner was coming. So they staged a phony bank robbery where him and his buddy, you know, they acted like they broke in while she was there, and they socked her so hard to knock her out to make it look good. And then it was $50,000. Now you got to remember, late 70s, early 80s, $50,000 was a lot of money, a lot of money. They said they caught him in Fort Lee in a swank high-rise, hiding in a closet, wearing brass knuckles. The $50,000 there wasn't no cash there. It was $50,000 worth of cocaine. He bought it wholesale. So that means that's probably $1 million street value. So at any rate, he went away for a long time. I don't know if he's out of prison. Maybe he's out of prison. I don't know. But I work with this guy. I work with this guy. I actually work with him. I was a hanger-on in the background. I wasn't mixed up with him personally, but I watched this happen. That my boss, in order to save some money, hired Nick's con. Well, but I guess that was a good thing, give the guy a chance. But he blew his chance, and he ended up doing some really stupid stuff. And I guess I never heard what happened to him after that. I guess he was remanded to prison, and he went to trial. And I never heard what happened to the stunning blonde either. Of course, now that we're both boomers, sort of, he must be in his late 50s, early 60s too himself. I don't know if he's, so we say, attractive to the women still. But, I work with this guy. I actually work with this guy. This ain't a made-up story. It's a real story. And this is the sort of people you meet. Oh, and he was a white guy. I was a white guy. He was a white guy. All the people I work with in this little company are all white. There's no, OGs or thugs. Although, if you think about it, he was a gangster and a thug himself. In the original terms of the words, gangster and thug. So I work with this guy.